You know, some people enjoy composing their own music, chord by chord, and others are happiest when they come across that one perfect song. Work is not a lot different than that. Whether you prefer building your own workflow or using a pre-made template, with Monday.com, you and the team can work in a way that's comfortable for everyone. Tap the banner to go to Monday.com and build your own amazing workflow, or find an awesome template. No judgment.
Welcome to the RuPaul's Drag Race Recap Show for Season 13, Episode 12, titled Nice Girls Roast. My name is Joe Betance, and I am joined, as always, by one very patient co-host from the podcast pod is my co-pilot. Please say...
Let's get this roast a-cooking.
A classic.
To Taylor, the Latte Boy. Hello, Taylor, the Latte Boy.
Hey, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing very well. We had a very extra special long episode of Just Between... No, actually a very normal length episode of Just Between Us Girls, but very in-depth. We talked a lot of tea. We learned tea about former contestants on the show, former co-hosts of the show, current boyfriends of the show. You lost your bidet.
Yes.
Which you at home might be thinking, how does one lose a bidet? If you want to know, you got to go to patreon.com/afterthoughtmedia, sign up at the premium level. We played voicemails, which we've never done before.
Yeah.
All kinds of tea going on over there. Patreon.com/afterthoughtmedia. Join in on all the fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting episode, Taylor. We have a lot to talk about, so we can't do...
Interesting is a word for it.
Yeah, we can't do... We can't do... Oh my God. This... Just to tip my hand here. Look. The Farrah roast that I just played a clip from, and the Laganja comedy bit, which is just iconic from start to finish, right? Are iconic... But there is something funny about that. Well, I have to... Okay, here we go. This week, the queens pair up for a makeup tutorial mini-challenge and roast some winners of the Miss Congeniality title. Candy wins the challenge, while Utica Queen and Simone are forced to battle it out in a lip-sync battle for their lives. In the end, Simone lives to see another day, while Utica Queen is asked to sashay away. Taylor, the Latte Boy... He of Pod is my co-pilot. Name 2 things you liked about the episode and 1 thing you did not.
I would say I loved the mini challenge.
Okay.
I thought the mini challenge was, I know they've sort of done things like in the past with legs and things like that, but there is a distinct difference between how Rue laughed during the mini challenge and how she was laughing during the roast. And the mini challenge felt genuine laughing.
Yeah.
So, and it was a fun thing to watch. I don't know that I have a second thing that I liked about this episode. I always like that they're doing a roast, and I enjoyed some of the jokes, but it wasn't necessarily like there have been stronger roasters. There have been stronger roasts in the past. Mm-hmm. The thing that I did not like is sort of an extension of last week's thing that I did not like. And it is, they are telegraphing so hard what we are expected to think. And some of the things that they are saying, particularly during deliberations, I don't know if they're watching a completely different maxi challenge than I am with things. I don't know that it was necessarily all that great. And adding on to that, I feel as though there was conspiracy related to the lip sync that we'll talk about during the lip sync as well. So it's the producers' machinations, the producers' puppet strings are clearly in shot for the last 20 minutes or so of the last couple of episodes, and I'm not, it's taking away from the enjoyment of the show. How about you?
Well, you know, when I was reading through a lot of the live episode discussions on the Discord, you know, I do a lot of homework for these shows. I take this very seriously, Taylor. This is my J-O-E. No, not J-O-E. That's my name. My J-O-B, you know. It's J-O-E.
J-O-E's J-O-B.
Yeah, sure is. And so Friday night,
Joe Jobs. That would be a great name for a show.
And every week I just do a different job, you know? Like one week I work at Starbucks. Or blow people. Actually, what it is.
People. You bring in listeners. At the highest level, Joe will fly you to Los Angeles and he'll blow you live on the air.
So I watched the episode very critically. I watched it 3 times, actually, this episode. I watched it 3 times. And I take notes. I try and look at for every angle and blah, blah, blah. And I read the Reddits and the this and the that. But one of the things I read is we have a live episode channel where the people on Discord, the Patreon supporters, can talk with each other during the show. And in that, they were saying, you know, Joe has always said XYZ about the roast, you know, and it's true. And I think that what I like is that people like Candy took that advice, not that they listened to the show, and they have applied it, you know, to what they did, because that was a very smart move. But also, good job on Rosé. You know, what Rosé did, so I really liked Rosé's roast. She was in a very tough position. We'll discuss it when we talk about the roast. And she was in a very tough tough position, and did very well. So Rosé's roast is one of the things I liked. Next, and this is going to be controversial. I am a huge fan of cringe. All right. So, like, for instance, one of my favorite all-time shows is the Comedy Central show Nathan For You, which is just I mean, if you like cringe, there's no show that's better at cringe than Nathan For You, right?
Yeah.
This Utica roast is probably one of the cringiest things. It's the cringiest thing that's ever been on the show. Maybe it's up there with Pearl telling Rue, is there something on my face?
Something on my face, yeah.
You know? And it was just pure cringe, and I was here for it. So I actually, even though it's probably the worst comedy routine in the history of the show, because there's nothing actually redeemingly funny, because, like, in other words, with Farrah's roast and Laganja's stand-up, they're iconically bad, where they're hilarious because of how bad they are. There is nothing here where you would be like, this is funny. Okay? Like, I will never want to listen to this again. Okay? But, amazing stuff. The thing I did not like, and it's in line with what you didn't like, the stunt shows, the hijinks, the tomfoolery is out of control. I think because this season is so guarded, so best friends race. I mean, think about what we just saw today. We're getting close to the end. We're now at the final 5 after this episode. And Candy wins a challenge and all the girls cheer. You know? In previous seasons, there would have been some side-eye and glares. And a confessional where they're like, well, I guess another week where we'd have Candy still. You know? No. Everyone's like legitimately happy for their friend Candy Muse. And they give them so little that you know, we're going to have to say something here. You know, I'll save it. We're going to have a mild spoiler segment. Mild. Later in the show. And I'll put the spoiler music and whatnot. Oh, I don't know if I have it right now. But, yeah, we're going to have to do something. So, because it involves this episode, the telegraphing of what's going on and all that. So, insane. I do not like it. All right, Taylor. After Tina's elimination, Utica believes she should have gone home instead of Tina. She asks for the group's opinion on her lip sync and confesses that she sees herself as the lip sync assassin of the season. The next day, RuPaul enters the workroom to announce this week's mini challenge, a video makeup tutorial. The queens, working in pairs, will create makeup tutorials on how to take the best selfie. One queen will function as the face, while the other will use her arms to act out the lesson. The pairs break down as follows: Candy and Rosé, Olivia and Simone, and Gottmik and Utica. Candy and Rosé win the challenge and gain an advantage in the Maxi Challenge. Taylor, your thoughts on all things after the elimination, all things the next day. What do you got for us?
I think the way that Utica was talking when she was talking about Tina, and she seemed to be going from sad to happy to, she was sort of all over the place.
Yeah.
And the way that she has talked about when she lip syncs, when she does some of these things, and when she is when she did Bob Ross for Snatch Game, some of the other activities that she's done, that she doesn't necessarily see what other people are seeing. Mm-hmm. It kind of speaks to an extreme version of what we talk about in therapy called mindfulness, meaning being very in the moment. Mm-hmm. And in that regards, I can't, the feeling, while there is this fear of that you may go home, I think Utica realized somewhere along the line she was never going to be the next Drag Race superstar. Mm-hmm. So I think that her thought is, I'm just going to enjoy the moment versus thinking ahead like the other queens do and realizing the ramifications of when you lip sync, it's, that means that there's a chance you're going to go home. This is not your opportunity to shine, when we've watched other lip syncers, you see a level of fear behind their eyes while they're lip syncing that you don't see with Utica. And this is sort of an example of that, I think, of where she is sort of like, hey, I got to send Tina home and isn't this great? And I just had so much fun out there. It's fun for us to watch as viewers, but it's sort of, there's this disconnect of, we just watched you. It's called lip sync for your life for a reason. Mm-hmm. So it's a little disconcerting that she doesn't quite get that. But there's also something about it that I can appreciate that somebody who sees the world that way, of where they are allowing themselves to feel what they're feeling in the moment. Mm-hmm. So in that regards, that's a good thing. It's just an odd, we've never seen a queen that's done something like that. Cause even usually when they say that when they're coming back and they're kind of puffing out their chest, it's not from a place of, I had so much fun out there. It's it's usually the famous, if I have to send all of you girls home through a lip sync, which is always the kiss of death thing to say, mm-hmm. then, that also was still fear based. Mm-hmm. But, and the whole idea of, am I this season's lip sync assassin? And, I just feel like this is so great. They were foreshadowing, they were telegraphing so hard in that first segment. Well, we know now who's going home this week. Mm-hmm.
Well, also they were telegraphing in that segment too. There's a discussion later where the girls talk about Rosé and Simone winning, and Candy's like, I haven't won and I need to win. I'm like, okay, well because the rumor, yeah. I know who wins, so I can look at the edit with that eye. And I'm like, well, yes, you're going to win this week. Yeah. Well, for anyone who doesn't know the ending, you're either like, well, Candy's going home this week or she's winning this week. One of the two is going to happen. Right. Utica, man, there are several places where we can talk about her, and I can talk about the same topic, and I guess can talk about it here. And if it comes up more, if I think of more later, I'll bring it up then. But I think there is something very off about her. I am not a mental health professional. Okay. You are. Mm-hmm. And I want you to diagnose her right here on the spot.
Oh yeah. No, that's totally going to happen.
Yeah. But the inability to read the room or read what the energy she's getting back is very, very bizarre. There's also an element that there's somebody I know that doesn't know how to feel in situations. And so she will often, I feel like, study how other people think and then try and replicate that. But anytime she's caught off guard, because it's not part of her study, actually Simone's a perfect example, not of this thing, but if you take Simone's performance, she has that, I called it a Marla Gibbs character, but a Marla Gibbs type character. And, she has it very studied, but anytime you give her anything that she hasn't prepared for weeks in advance of the show, she falls flat, like in the roast. Same thing here where, like, I have a friend, she studies how human beings are supposed to react. And if an emotion happens that doesn't work, it throws her off, almost like a robot who's here and studied how humans act and doesn't know how to respond when you're like, I don't know what emotion is. So what I'm trying to get at is it sounds like Utica knows how to pretend to be a human, but in situations where it's an unusual situation, like being on a reality show and in a competition like this, it's just something off where she's doing the whole, like, I know I'm supposed to cry here. And I'm supposed to be like, it seems like an act. Like, I'm supposed to be sad that Tina's gone. Right?
But I'm just too excited.
Well, then on a dime, it's not even like, it's like on a dime. Okay, now that the tears are gone, what'd you guys think of the lip sync?
Yeah.
How was it? How was I? And it's just very, very strange. It's it's weird. It's very weird.
Well, yeah, I mean, she doesn't seem to be, and this was talked. I told you not to watch Untucked because most of it was just everybody saying, how do you think I did to each other?
Really?
Or how they all thought they did. And then the nice girls came back and talked to them for a couple of minutes. But they talk about that a little bit as far as there are times that it's off-putting. Mm-hmm. Because you're either trying too hard or you're not trying enough. There seems to be no connection between Utica and a lot of the other girls. And, it is, I have thoughts that I'm not going to necessarily share because it's not fair. I'm not her therapist. I mean, there are things that I am seeing that they are showing. I'm getting a selection that the producers have selected for me as far as segments that could lead to whether it's a diagnosis or whether it's, how I would treat Utica if, for care if she came in to see me. But, that has been something that you see somebody who is so Utica is fascinating in that she sees the world in a very different way, or she is learning her place in the world in a very different way than all of the other contestants have this season and the majority of the other seasons. So in that regard, she's fascinating to watch. But it's also, there is that cringe factor sometimes where you just think, oh, that's not what you're don't.
Well, she's a Seventh-day Adventist who lived on a farm, and it sort of feels like she's on her Rumspringa, but there was a reality show about these Amish kids who go on their Rumspringa. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Amish lifestyle, there is some sort of rite of passage in the Amish culture where I think you hit like 17 or 18 or something.
Yeah.
You go out into the real world and you live for a year, and you have to make a choice whether you're going to commit to the Amish lifestyle or stay out in the world. And what's really sad is then they cut you off, which is very bizarre if you stay out in the real world. But it does sort of, but when you see in the reality show, and there was a documentary about it too, these kids, when they go out in the real world, they
go buck wild.
Yeah. And it's hard for them to adjust to sort of a different culture, than the one they're used to. And so, first of all, they have very weird haircuts. Okay. But I think it's the same thing with Utica. She's left Utica, New York, which is in upstate New York, and she left her farm. I don't know if she lives on a farm, but like, I think she's with these drag queens, and she's just like, it sort of reminds me of, who was that queen from last year who did that really bad Snatch game? Aiden Zane. Yeah. Who was a bedroom queen and hadn't really left her bedroom, and I think found it difficult to interact with these very real world, real drag queens. Her conflict with them was different, but I think there's something about Utica because one of the, I think the fatal flaws and sort of the naivete about Utica was, they have these story producers. And as Dita Ritz shared with us on her interview, you are assigned a story producer. And that's your story producer. And they're the ones that talk to you in the confessionals. And Utica makes the fatal mistake of thinking that story producer is her advocate and on her side. And she's telling them things because she thinks that they're on her team. Meanwhile, they're like, oh, thank you for saying that Olivia's going to do shitty, but you said over there that Olivia's going to do well. Yeah,
there's a naivete with Utica that we have never really seen before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think in a very clever, it's probably always been there, but they saved it to build the story they wanted to build, Mm-hmm. And so there's been an arc. It's fascinating, but I think there's something very off about it. All right, let's move on. The next, we already did that. Next, RuPaul. Oh, we didn't talk about the mini challenge.
I love the mini challenge. I thought the mini challenge was a lot of fun. I would have assumed that Anastasia of Beverly Hills would have been the person, because she was on like All Stars 1, right?
All Stars 2.
All Stars 2?
Yeah, I have the answer. I actually looked up Norvina.
Okay.
Norvina is Anastasia's daughter.
Oh, okay.
And now runs the company. You know, I think maybe Anastasia's like, I'm retired.
Does
now.
she wear that glittery dress to staff meetings? Because if so, I need to apply to work for Anastasia.
Also, very strange that a cis woman is wearing that almost drag queen like breast thing to accentuate her cleavage.
Yeah,
but is a cisgendered woman. I had to look it up, not because she seems like it, but I was just the way she dressed. She dressed like a drag queen, which. It's probably smart to
maybe
do.
She was having fun. Yeah. I mean, if she came in a power suit, then you would, we're talking about her. Whereas before we would have been like, oh, that was some random woman was sitting in a director's chair next to her.
There's strangely an article about Norvina. Norvina's not her real name. It's actually a very interesting story. It actually kind of is her real name. She was born in Romania, which I guess is where Anastasia from Beverly Hills is. Makes sense. They wanted to name her Norvina when she was born. I don't know what that name means. But in Romania, I guess, you have to name someone a Romanian name, so it was rejected. So Anastasia is kind of fierce. Is like, all right, and heard the other person next to her naming the daughter Claudia. So she names like, oh, okay, I like that one, and names her Claudia. So on her birth certificate, it's Claudia, and I guess in professional sense she goes by Claudia, but here in the U.S. and her family, they call her Norvina because that was the name that the mom wanted to name her. But couldn't in Romania. So, and runs the company and is some sort of like popular makeup beauty guru. I don't know if it's because she runs this major makeup company or what, but yeah. So that's who she is. She was fine. I thought she was having a lot of fun with it. I liked her better than like Anastasia from Beverly. Anastasia Beverly Hills was very like, old Romanian mom was like, you will listen to me and I teach you how to do makeup eyebrows. Like.
You put the brow on so you don't look like man.
Yeah.
Very. Whereas this, she was having fun. It was a fun. It seemed like everybody sort of exhaled a little bit. Like it was just sort of we're going to be silly. We're gonna have fun with it. Nobody seemed to get flustered with it, and it was Rue laughing. Rue seemed to be genuinely laughing at some of the. She was laughing fast enough that that she wasn't trying to laugh. That some of the things that when they were coming at each other with the brush and stuff, and they were that it was. Rue laughing is a great sound when it's genuine, and this felt very genuine.
Which she hasn't done one of those mini challenge type of bits before in a long time, where she sits, she's actually there. What I will say is, going back to Norvina, is she seemed to know the show. I almost get the sense, because Anastasia, when she was on All Stars 2, was like, why is she here? Right. But I bet you Norvina's the fan and was the one that sort of convinced Anastasia to sign on. But usually in what we haven't seen one of these vanity judge things in a long time,
Yeah.
But do you remember in the early days when they used to have the guy from Absolute Cocktails on? I don't know what that asshole's name was.
Jeffrey Moran.
Oh, Jeffrey Moran.
Yeah.
He was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
He was a fucking prick to the girls, right?
Right.
And he thought he was like a real judge. This girl had a sense of humor about it and loved the show, and I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have minded seeing her on the panel. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I could see that if they did like a makeup challenge, like a serious makeup challenge. I would love to see something like that.
Yeah, she had a lot of fun. I'm a fan. All right, now we can move on. Next, RuPaul announced this week's Maxi Challenge. It's a roast. This time there's no audience, and their guests of honor will be former Miss Congeniality queens Heidi N. Closet, Nina West, and Valentina. As the winners of the mini challenge, Candy and Rosé get to determine the lineup. Candy takes the opening spot, while Rosé chooses the closing spot. Later in the workroom, Simone and Gottmik worry about their comedy chops. Utica tells Olivia she'll be great, but says the opposite in the confessional. Taylor, your thoughts on everything that happened in the workroom?
As far as when are we talking about Rosé and Candy figuring out the order?
If you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that they seemed. I'm glad to see that they worked together. I was worried at one point when they both said they wanted to go first that was going to start an argument. But I think Rosé was smart to go, you know what? Fuck it. We're at the end at this point. She's pretty much knows, unless she really shit the bed, that, which there was a level of confidence there with her and her considering herself to be a comedy queen, like she said last week, that she feels as though she could nail it. So if you have an opportunity to take that like that, I don't see why you wouldn't. and that, her and Candy got to work together and figure out everybody's and not trying to fuck anybody over. They said we purposely did this so that we tried really hard to not fuck anybody over. Whereas I feel like when you compare that to last season's All Stars, where Cracker pretty much said, "I am doing this to fuck you all over," that was nice to see.
Yeah,
and I thought the order made sense.
Look, I've said it so many times that I'm only going to do a brief review. A roast is different from a typical lineup in a comedy show, okay? In that, because in a stand-up comedy show, you could have Lori as the opener, and she's going to talk about being a fat lesbian. Then you could have Joe doing his stand-up, and I'm going to talk about being a fat gay, right? And then you could have Shannon, she's going to talk about being a straight woman who's married, right? In a roast, all the jokes are on the same topic. So, and Candy says this in the confessional, which is very savvy. In her confessional, she says a couple of reasons why she wants to go first, but one of them is, if I go first, I can say the joke first, and the other girl, she actually says it in an opposite way. She says, if I'm going after first and another girl uses my joke, I'm going to be shit out of luck. So if I go first, I can do all the jokes first, which is the smartest thing. The roast position in the first position, unlike a usual comedy show, is the smartest position. Also, what's really funny, just by nature of, because one of the things in a stand-up show is the opener is usually a tough spot because they have to warm the audience up.
Right.
There was no audience. The audience people are already there. They're warmed up essentially. So so Candy was at another advantage is that they're ready for this. Like they're, it's a thing. But even still, and we'll get to this when we analyze the roasts, is in Candy's roast, she says, "Hey judges," and they go, "Hi," all of them say, "Hi, Candy." And by the time you get to Olivia, and she goes, "And the judges," and it's just Ru going, "Hey." They're already tired by that point, So there's already full of energy for Candy, so that was an advantage. So very, very smart move. And Rosé taking a very brave move, because if you're going to close, that means all the jokes have been said. In fact, if you think about Rosé's set, as good as it was, she repeated some of the jokes, especially with Nina West, you know? And so that's just by the very nature, that's sort of the problem with going last. All right, let's move on. On the main stage, the girls run their sets for Michelle Visage and comedy veteran Lonnie Love. Candy Muse goes too blue. Gottmik fumbles through her notes. Olivia Luck struggles to be mean. Rosé impresses the judges with her jokes. Simone confuses the judges. And finally, Utica is brutal and chooses to brush off the suggestions of the judges. It's elimination day and the girls get ready for the runaway. Candy reveals that she uses comedy as a coping mechanism, and Rosé treasures the sound of laughter. Taylor, any thoughts on that Maxi Challenge rehearsal or the elimination day?
Well, I think the Maxi Challenge rehearsal, the cringe level with Utica, I almost want to say that was worse than her routine with where they're saying to her, don't do the fat jokes, or don't do the where you're making your hands really big and do that sort of thing. And she just keeps going where, and I don't know if that's nerves. I don't know if that's where she there's just this disconnect of where she thinks, oh, we're being playful and we're reading each other, or what it was. But that to me was where my husband kept doing where he kept turning around and looking at me like, are you seeing the same thing I'm seeing, sort of thing? And I just was like, this is not good. Or I was very much the gif of Chrissy Teigen at the People's Choice Awards where I'm doing the weird, like, kind of, it was bad. I thought Lonnie Love was really great as a coach with everybody. I think that she did a really good job in that regards. What are your thoughts on the maxi staged?
Let me tell you about this Lonnie Love. Because I saw some things on Reddit that were like, oh, they should have had Nicole Byer on because she's a comic. Lonnie Love, maybe you haven't heard of her. Stand-up comedians, especially in Los Angeles, but I think she's all over the place. Lonnie Love is fucking legit. You do not get more legit and veteran than Lonnie Love. I think even Nicole Byer would be like, no. They got the right person for this job. Lonnie Love's been around forever. She was iconic when I started stand-up. Mm-hmm. You know, I remember being at a show. I think I've told this story before on the show. I remember being at the Improv when she was doing a set, and I went to the bathroom to pee, and at the Improv, they would play you could hear the audio from the stage in the bathroom. And this is like 2006, I want to say. And she was the headliner then. She was already iconic in 2006. And I was peeing, and she told this joke, which I'm going to fuck up, and a lot of it has to do with her delivery, which is so fantastic. But she was talking about how she hated on American Idol when they would eliminate you and make the not drag queen, they would make sometimes, but on American Idol, when you got eliminated, then they would make you sing a song. Uh-huh. And she was like, that's as if you worked at the post office and they fired you and they gave you some mail and said, can you drop this off on the way home? And I remember laughing so hard, like my pee was just going all over the place in the urinal. Uh-huh. I was laughing so hard. And her delivery was awesome on that line. But like, she was already, Lonnie Love is iconic. And I'm not taking away from Nicole Byer as a comedian, but I'm just saying she's been around for a long time and she knows her shit. And like I said, even Nicole Byer would bow down to Lonnie Love. So there's that. Next, what you were talking about with Utica, it's the same thing that we were just talking about. You know, it's so funny. And again, I know I read this on Reddit, but it was already floating in my brain. So this is already out there in the ether, is that for someone who was so concerned about her Bob Ross wig or dressing in the Babs outfit, this behavior reinforces something that I had suspected before, is that whole nonsense was performative, and to sort of use a term from the right, it seemed a lot like virtue signaling, because I don't think she really believed it. Because how do you say, I'm so concerned about being canceled and being offensive with my afro, even the guy had an afro, and that I don't want to, appropriate black culture, and then go as ham as she did in this thing. And okay, I could see going ham like that in the rehearsal, but then they're telling you, you're really being that's not funny. And then she is like, yeah, fuck it, I'm not going to do that. Like, how does they're saying you're being cruel and saying horrible, awful
right. I
things.
mean, it was just mean. There was nothing even remote. If she had said where she had a joke, if she had a fat joke that was funny, that was genuinely funny. I mean, Rose, I feel like had the one where she said, of course, Nina's here. One of her shoulders could be in Texas and the other could be in Arkansas, kind of like that. I mean, that sort of is speaking on Nina's size. And that was a funny joke. They thought that was fun. If there's a cleverness, if there's an intelligence to it, she could have, as a tall, lanky guy, she could have maybe got away with that. But the fact that there was no humor to it, it was just pretty much saying, hey, fat pig, that's not okay.
There was just, well, it was kind of like when you're doing the notes, you go, okay, what can we make fun of? All right, Nina West is a fat pig. How do we make this funny? She's going out there saying, you're a fat pig.
Right.
So, I don't know. We're going to listen to that one. So we will analyze it. Yeah. Yeah, it's mind-boggling. It is a mind-boggling. It is an act that could study for days, and maybe we'll study it more on the rumor mill tomorrow, because we'll have Lori on there, and Lori, for those of you who don't know, Lori is an iconic. She in the LA comedy scene. It's like if there was a Mount Rushmore, Lori would be. Well, she'd be the mountain, but.
You said that joke before, but
it's still funny. But she is iconic in the LA comedy scene. So to hear her, Lonnie Love would defer to Lori.
Yeah.
In fact,
in fact, Lonnie Love has sat at the feet of Lori.
She has.
And taken a master class at times.
She has. And in fact, has invited her to the House of Love. So now, actually, technically her name's Lori Love. Yeah. And that's so we'll break down we'll do Utica today here, but we will break down most of the bits. I don't know if I'm going to hit, some of them, but the most important ones will hit tomorrow on the Rumor Mill. But
what are your thoughts on? I figured we would talk a little bit about the mirror moments because talking about not only humor sort of as a defense mechanism, which I feel like you and I both use, but not only that, but the medicine, the mind medicine that you get with hearing somebody laugh. I have said on Pod is my co-pilot, and I've said on here, and one of my favorite noises in the world, one of my favorite sounds in the world is when I say something and you genuinely laugh at what I'm saying. That is one of my favorite things because I consider you to be very funny, and I consider you to be very clever, and I tend to be the straight man on this show. So when I do occasionally say something and you laugh, that is a great feeling for me.
Well, because it never happens. So
exactly. So now it's rare. I feel like it happened more early on, but that's when Daniel was the straight guy.
Yeah,
I've sort of moved to being where I'm this. But what can you say as far as laughter as a defense mechanism? And talk to me a little bit about how you feel when you get people to laugh. What is that like for you?
Well, it happens so often. I think I've sort of lost.
Fuck off.
No. Actually, this is something that Aiden and I argue about. I don't think I'm very funny. I really don't. I think I'm really good if I have a skill at making people that I know who are funny funnier. So like Lori is a perfect example. Have you heard Lori and Horrible, when she's on other shows? But when she's on with me, I know how to make her funny. By sort of being the straight man, so to speak, and whatnot. And, but I know what you're saying. And also in this thing that we do, Taylor, we don't really hear laughter. We just have to assume that people are laughing later. But yes, there is something, palliative about being able to make someone laugh. It's funny to think of something that I take for granted. I think I heard Rose comment on that, and I did think like, oh, I should probably be appreciative more that I am not as good as other people, but can do it. And so, it does. I don't think necessarily laughing. Well, no, I've talked about in very, very difficult times in my life, the greatest moments that I've had and the greatest gifts that I've given people have been either they made me laugh or I made them laugh. I remember when my friend Melissa, her mom died suddenly. Like, the dad woke up and the mom was dead. She wasn't sick. She wasn't anything, just dead. And so to get that sort of sudden news, I remember her husband called and said, "Hey, can you come over and sort of hang out?" And I happen to have a personality flaw that benefits that, in that when I'm uncomfortable with things, I will just avoid it and make other jokes. And I think that's what she needed at that point. It wasn't that I was some sort of genius. It was just like, I don't want to talk about her dead mom. So I will talk about other things, and that made her laugh. And it was for that time she could forget it. And I think same thing when I was going through my deep depression, when my grandparents died, the greatest phone calls I had were like with my friends who are comedians and made jokes, or Lori,
Comedians and Lori.
Well, Lori is so high that you can't even call her a comedian,
Right. Well, I mean, you and I talked before we started taping, as far as we brought up the idea that I was in a really depressed mood one night, and just out of nowhere, you randomly mentioned your cousin's friend who's named Tittles. And for some reason, just you saying that, I started like scream laughing, like where it was just this release that I needed. That was just really good.
Yeah,
so, I mean, laughter is so important, and humor, especially with the last like year and a half that we've had, is so important.
Just to fill the audience, and Tittles was this, imagine Stacey Lane Matthews, but a blonde white woman. And, she, was a crazy person. And I was a child. I was probably an adolescent, more like between the ages of 10 and 12. And my gay cousin, who was an older gay cousin, would bring over Tittles. And there'd always be these crazy stories about her, about how like she had to go to a wedding, but she didn't have a gift. So she took all her utensils and wrapped them, and that was her gift at the wedding, and whatnot. So That's what Taylor is talking about. All right. Well, why don't we do this? On that note, why don't we take a break? And when we come back, we are going to get right into the roast. Where's this break? Oh.
This is Amy Poehler. My new movie, Disney and Pixar's Inside Out 2, is coming to theaters June 14th, and it's making me feel joy and sadness and anger, definitely some disgust, and I think a little fear. But I'm also feeling these new emotions like anxiety, embarrassment, envy, and ennui.
It's what you call the boredom.
Okay, that one was weird. It's going to be the feel everything movie of the summer. Disney and Pixar's Inside Out 2, rated PG, parental guidance suggested. Only in theaters June 14th. Get tickets now.
Yeah! I did it from far today. I actually did a fist pump too. I don't think I've ever done that.
You
before.
did.
Mm-hmm.
Also with your beanie on. We haven't talked about your beanie.
Yeah, with my summer beanie. Yeah, you know what it is I can't find my hair clip. And so I don't know, this is going to be such an obscure reference, but the way I usually have a hair clip, but I can't find it. So I've had my hair in a band, and the way I have to do it in the band is I look like, this is such an obscure reference. I will be surprised if anyone except listener I'm a Librarian gets this. I had a children's book called, what was it about? It was about a cat that was really bad. I don't remember what it was, but the cat was a really bad cat. And the fire cat, because the firehouse adopts him.
Okay.
And in the beginning, he's the stray cat that this woman named Mrs. Goodkind finds. And she has her hair done in such a way that it's like a hair and then a little big bow that goes all the way up, like a big ball. Uh-huh. And that's what I look like. I look like Mrs. Goodkind from the fire cat. And I didn't want to have that today, so I put on a summer beanie to hide it, because my hair is a mess right now. It's crazy. I have like a summer beanie on. It actually looks like more like I'm a Keebler elf, but I didn't want to subject you to the hair. All right, Taylor.
Yep.
Nina West, Valentina, and Heidi in Closet join the queens on the main stage for the roast. Candy Muse lights up the room with her opening set. Simone fumbles. Utica stumbles. Gottmik shines. Olivia fizzles. And finally, Rosé crushes. Taylor, your thoughts on this Nice Girls roast. Who did you like? Who did you not like? Give us all the tea.
So kind of going down the line, I thought Candy started off to me very weak, and then got stronger over the course of her set. Mm-hmm. I thought in the beginning she was just sort of being Candy, and there was not a lot of polish to it. And then like you sort of watched her get into her groove a little bit more than I was expecting her to. Mm-hmm. And by the end, a couple of the things that she said were funny, but there was still a roughness to it that was very Candy. But the jokes in the beginning I thought were not great. What were your thoughts on Candy?
It was, to be honest with you, I think we both agree she should not have won.
I wholeheartedly, yes, I would say.
And I think the debate really is whether it should have been Gottmik or Rosé, Yes. And we'll see where you fall and stuff like that. I thought it was fine. And, in a weird kind of way, even though it was perfectly fine, there's no complaints. I actually thought she had some very solid jokes in there. I do have a little bit of a conspiracy theory, but there is evidence to back it up. But I think she was fine. She was good. I laughed. Some good jokes in there.
Do you want to talk about your conspiracy theory?
Yeah, I'll talk about it right now. We know this from the season that season 9. They did a sort of similar routine, or they did some sort of the pheromone roast.
I was going to say that was the Michelle Visage roast.
Michelle Visage roast of season 9.
Yeah,
they had like when they do a song, the girls will go and they'll record their lyrics, and then they go and when they work with the choir, and the girls almost go like what is the thing where you work in like you build this assembly line? There's some sort of assembly line, right? So while that's all going on, maybe they're in rehearsal, they're with this or they're with that. On season 9, they worked with a writer, okay? Mm-hmm. And I am 75% sure that they did the same thing here.
Yeah.
The reason being, and I think the way the producers control it is how much help the writer gives the performer is controlled in their individual meetings, so that if they want someone to do poorly, they get less help. If they want someone to do well, they get more help.
I was going to say, to make sure that Utica didn't kill it.
Yeah.
They didn't suddenly give her, whereas...
Or Simone is a perfect example, too.
Or Simone, but then you've also got somebody like where they don't want to watch... They need Trinity in season 6 to do well, to complete her arc, so they pretty much hand her a pre-written...
Yeah.
You know, as we have thought possibly when we talked about season 6.
Well, I don't remember who talked about it. I remember it was Peppermint herself, but no one helped Farrah, but Peppermint got a lot of help. I remember that was the thing, and and I think because some of Gottmik's, not Gottmik's. I'm sorry, we're not there yet. Candy says in her confessional that she's never been good at roasts, right?
Yeah.
But there was a polish to her jokes that seemed like they'd been through a punch up or a rewrite. Also, the last 2 jokes at the end about Jurassic Park and she died. She's so old that she died or something like that, right?
I told her to act her age and she died.
Yeah, I think that joke has even been on Drag Race before. That's an old timey roast joke.
Yeah.
Okay. That is old timey. That is as old as roasts,
Yeah.
And so, like, it had that feel. Also, there were some. Particularly very, not inside, but like jokes or like almost like they were suggestions that the queens had, that because like, why would they know that Lonnie Love was an electrical engineer? Or
I thought that too, where somebody said they were going to make a joke about that, and that was like, well,
they must have gotten a sheet for topics, because like there were a lot of jokes about Valentina being on Rent, and I'm like, who remembers that? Like, of all the Valentina jokes, there were so many jokes about her performance on Rent. And I'm like, oh, that's...
Well, wouldn't that just happen? When was that?
I don't know.
That would have just happened before.
It was pre-pandemic. And they recorded this like in late summer of 2020.
Okay.
So, it just seems a very strange thing,
Yeah.
And then some of the jokes were just, not necessarily with Candies, but, I felt with Gottmik, and I don't think Rosé had much help, but there was somebody else who was like, Olivia had one good joke, and I was like, how do you have nothing but shitty jokes but then one good joke that seemed written and in the right structure and all that? It was sort of weird. So, there was some sort of, again, chicanery going on in this show. I think we just don't know what it was, you know? So that's sort of my thought on Candy. I think good, solid set. I don't think it was the winner. I think, to me, it was a safe set. Some of the jokes were written. But again, I think all the girls got some degree of help to varying degrees, depending on how the producers wanted them to do. All right. What did you think of Simone?
Simone's she was definitely overthinking the jokes. And the only thing missing for me with this one was the microphone feedback like they did for Alyssa when roast, that's sort of the overmodulation and stuff. She just looked panicked the entire time. But again, she was also kind of relying on that cadence and that way that she talks, of where she tries to be, as you said, the Marla Gibbs type character.
Yeah.
That was, it's kind of deflate. As much as I love Simone and thought she looked beautiful, there's something very kind of where you're sort of like, oh, we're doing this again, kind of thing.
What I find puzzling is, look, and I said this before, Simone, yes, she's a very prepared queen. Okay, very prepared. But even still has a sense to take the elements that she knows and knows how they work. And what I mean is, a lot of her jokes didn't have punchlines, so it wasn't like like Olivia's a perfect example. Olivia had punchlines that failed.
Yeah.
Simone just didn't have punchlines with some of the jokes, which seems very bizarre. Like, I would think that Simone, who's such a prepared queen, would have at least a punchline, even if it failed. That's what I find very, very strange and puzzling about the whole thing.
And she mentioned that, she did mention that in the, in Untucked, where she was mad at herself because she goes, I know I could have done better and I didn't. And that makes me mad that I had an opportunity here and I kind of dropped the ball.
What I don't get, now this could be the way the show works now. As you know, not to do a Patreon plug, the exclusive tier at Patreon right now, we are currently covering season 3 of RuPaul's Drag Race. And so recently we covered an episode, or a couple episodes, where the Heathers, which is comprised of Raja, Carmen, Manila, and Delta, have been very critical of Shangela because they say Shangela relies on like Mariah to do her wig and for Alexis to help with the sewing or Yara to help with the sewing, that she relies on everyone for help. Okay, and that gets them angry that she's not really the competition, although she has all the other drag queens doing her work. So why wouldn't Simone go to, like, she knows Rosé is doing well, why wouldn't she go to Rosé and say, can you help me with my jokes? Maybe there's a rule about it now where they can't? I don't know. It's very, very strange.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there were just no, or can you look over my jokes and give me some notes? Because, like I said, there were no punchlines, which was very, very strange.
Yeah, it was just sort of, it was flat.
Yeah.
There was nothing really joyous about it.
Yeah.
It was panic. She looked scared the entire time.
Yeah. Now next we have Utica. Now Utica we're going to actually play. Okay? I have them all, but we're going to actually play this one.
Yeah.
Here we go. Let me lower it a little bit. Kind of, it's been running loud. Here we go.
Oh, Simone, I thought I was the one who had the balls to bomb that hard.
Okay, so good joke out of the gate. Now, by the way, there is a very interesting, I was thinking about this earlier, that in a weird kind of way, the pandemic has helped the editors. Because with no audience there, it gives them complete freedom to make anyone as good or as bad as they want.
Yeah, I thought that was also very weird. That had to be odd to be on a stage telling jokes and stuff and to not get that immediate reaction from the audience other than the horrible fake laughing behind.
Yeah, but what's tricky is they ran into a problem in that Utica tells, you'll hear right now, it's the Simone and Pumbaa joke, where they need to stay on it. They couldn't give her the bomb silence. And you hear people actually laugh at the joke, but it's off mic. You'll hear it. Watch.
Great job, Simone! The judges love you so much in this competition, especially Ross. You know, Ross and Simone, I think you guys would make a great couple. Simone and Pumbaa. Hakuna Matata!
See, they had to say on it for the Hakuna Matata part. But then they try to treat it like it's a joke, but you actually hear the few people laughing. It doesn't. That joke makes no sense. I still don't even know what. I know there's Timon, so Simone, but how is? Because originally in the joke it was RuPaul was going to be Pumbaa. How is Ross Pumbaa?
Because Pumbaa is the warthog.
I guess you're right. Yeah, it's a horrible joke.
Yeah, it's not a great joke.
He just liked the idea that Simone rhymed with Timon.
Yeah.
Ross, you know I love you. You are so gay that you don't on the you Skittles on the.
What do you think what the original line was? What didn't we hear? Does anybody know in the Discord? Do they have the iTunes version? I want to say you don't sit on the dick. You Skittles on the dick?
It's shit.
Oh yeah, because they wouldn't bleep out sit. You don't shit on the dick. You Skittles on the dick?
Like shit on the toilet? You Skittles on it?
I'm trying to figure out what the joke even is.
Yeah. It's not. I mean, Skittles, I guess, because the rainbow sort of thing, but again, not great.
Yeah.
You're so gay. They should. They should make the whole. They should.
Oh God! Here it goes.
Take Celebrity Big Brother and make it Celebrity Big Brother with benefits.
What does that even mean?
It doesn't. It's you're pretty much watching the roller skates where you see somebody with also the like legs are like whoa.
Yeah,
that's kind of what we're getting.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that I got my balls out of the way and I'm bombing. I know.
Let me tell you guys something. Such a rookie mistake as a comic to acknowledge that you're bombing. You don't. Not to quote Elaine Boozler from the deodorant commercials. Such an old-timey joke. You never let them see you sweat. Okay, for anyone under 40, there was a series of commercials with 1980s comic Elaine Boozler for... what was it for? For
Arid Extra Dry?
Yeah. Where she talked about being a comic and bombing, and she says, you never let them see you sweat. And I don't know why that commercial stuck with me. And you remembered it too.
Another podcast I used to listen to used to go back and make fun of that commercial all the time because the one of the co-hosts, instead of going to his senior prom, went and saw Elaine Boozler in concert. So they used to talk about Elaine Boozler, and they used to talk about. That's the only reason I remember. It's the only reason I remember what commercial that is because they used to play the commercial on the show.
We might play it in a bit. Hold on.
Yeah. Nino.
I'm gonna play it when you're like eyeing the clock because you have to go. That's when I'm gonna play it.
Okay. West.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you could speak whale.
That is a horrible joke. It's not even funny.
Well, and the best part of that is where at one point, Nina West is just like, yes, finally a joke. Maybe we got a joke out of this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, here we go.
Heidi, you really...
I thought she turned...
really remind me of the people I grew up with on the farm. Gap-toothed and full of bull semen.
What does that even mean? I mean, yeah, but then
the full of bull semen is kind of funny. If that's one that I could see if she workshopped it a little bit and figured out another way to do it. But by the way, somebody in the chat room said that the joke was, "You are so gay that you don't shit on the dick, you Skittles on the dick."
Horrible joke.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Because then right now she's going to make a fatal error. Fatal error. Even if it's not your... Well, first of all, you would never do this in a comic because for what's going to happen, but here we go.
What? Girl, huh?
Valentina, you are such...
I thought there was a part with Lonnie Love. All right, here we go. When we get to the Lonnie Love part, we'll see.
A beautiful sister.
Thank you.
But you have this diva attitude that's really hard to swallow.
I do.
It's just as hard to swallow as Lonnie Love's comedy career.
Okay.
This part was... you almost couldn't watch. I couldn't because I don't like cringe, whereas I'm sure you were just... going to town on yourself watching the next part.
It was like having a really sour Patch Kid. But let me tell you, what she's going to do right now is dangerous to do with anyone in the crowd, anyway. But to do it with a seasoned comic like Lonnie Love, bitch, you are asking for trouble. Here we go.
Who's already tried to be nice and tried to give you, and at this point goes, you know what? Fuck it.
Yeah. And what's so funny, if you look at she's laughing, but they show the panel for a second, and they're stone-faced. Ross, RuPaul, and Michelle Visage, it's almost like they're frozen wax statues. They're just staring straight ahead, stone-faced, and she's laughing, which makes it even more eerie.
You're the one bombing!
Yeah. She just teed it up for Lonnie Love to hit it out of the ballpark. Why would you ever, ever, ever do that? Oh my God, what a fatal error. Okay, here we go.
No! I love it!
You like that? You like that, RuPaul?
See, now, okay. And again, you see this a lot. Okay, so she makes the fatal error, which can happen with even though Lonnie Love's not a heckler because she called on her. But a heckler can sometimes turn on the comic. It's why you don't really engage with a heckler.
I would say at this point, Lonnie decided I'm going to heckle. That is definitely what this felt like.
Yeah, and because they can, especially Lonnie Love heckling you, and so now she's desperate. She's the flop sweat.
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, it is where you are watching her replay being made fun of when she was 8 years old someplace.
Yeah.
Where that is the scene that is going through her head while she is watching everybody. Because now it has gone from, because I think on some level, people, at least especially the fellow contestants, they're all rooting for each other to do well. And I think at that point, they went from we're rooting for you is to now everybody's against you.
Yeah.
You've completely lost everybody at this point because we've seen that you can't handle it.
And then she just digs a fucking hole deeper. Here we go.
RuPaul, you are such a fashion icon. If you could stand up for us, please.
Now, this is not going to be audio. It's not audio, but RuPaul then flips Utica off. Double flip off. And then does an obscene hand gesture that I believe is someone said was fisting. Right?
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you this. Because actually, believe it or not, I have to explain this because there are, believe it or not, a significant number of people who don't get what the joke was. The joke is, and for anyone who's obsessed with Drag Race, they might know this, is that RuPaul's outfits are designed intentionally so that the bottom can be taken off, and she goes into, she doesn't like to be in drag, so she wears, sweatpants or pajama pants and slippers underneath the desk. So when whatever you're seeing is just top up. Underneath, she's wearing sweatpants and slippers. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so the joke, and obviously Utica's been on the set, so she knows this. And so the joke is, well, stand up, RuPaul, so that everyone can see. And, she might have just bought the plane ticket herself.
I was going to say the fact that Ru didn't go, you know what? Just sashay away now.
Yeah. That was, I don't know why. You could tell everyone's like, like the episode of Twilight Zone where the kid can turn you into a toy or whatever.
Right.
And you're, oh God. So that's sort of the tension, and the flip off releases that tension, and everyone's laughing because they're like, oh God, thank God RuPaul found it funny. Yeah. Oh God, here we go. That's what everyone screamed laughing about, because then what you're really hearing right there is just tension being released. All right, well, let's zip through the other ones. Gottmik, any thoughts on Gottmik?
I thought Gottmik was great. I have become definitely a Gottmik convert over the course of the season for the most part. I wasn't a big fan of hers in the beginning, but as she I think is someone who we've seen, I think, the largest amount of growth over the season, especially for somebody who didn't necessarily think that they were really good at particular things. She talked about how she didn't think she was going to be good at this roast. And I thought that a lot of the jokes hit it out of the park. The joke about Ross coming when the pizza guy shows up in the pornos was a funny joke. I don't know if that's an old joke or not, but
I think she speaks to, what I was saying earlier is, how do you show up at rehearsal with nothing?
But she didn't seem to show up with the rehearsal. She did have a couple of jokes that they laughed at and said, just work on them a little bit. I'm not saying that she didn't get help with them, but I am saying that, I mean, she at least, and also something's to be said about the delivery.
Yeah. No, you're right. That's 100% mostly what it is. Like I told you.
And they can write everything. They could have written all of those jokes for Simone, but her delivery in it was not there. Whereas, I mean, Gottmik seemed comfortable.
Yeah.
Up at the stage. And that was nice to watch, especially after the last one.
Case in point, I was telling that Lonnie Love story, how important delivery is I'm sure you maybe heard it and you're like, man, that's not funny of a joke, but Lonnie Love's delivery was so solid that it sold the joke.
Right.
And so it's the same thing here. Is like, you can write as good of a joke for somebody, but they have to sell it. And so I will say one thing you can't take away from Gottmik is that she was able to very smoothly and effortlessly sell those jokes. That said, I still think it went through a polish with a writer. That just sort of maybe helped her with the concept and structure it correctly. Next, we have Olivia. Thoughts?
I think I get what Olivia was trying to do. I think she was trying to take the notes that Lonnie and Michelle gave her during rehearsal of, you can play into the sweet thing, the sweet branding, but then you have to be mean and sweet at the same time, of where your delivery of the jokes, I have a friend of mine that I used to work with that he is just this big mountain of a man. And I used to always make the joke. He's 350 pounds, but he opens his mouth and Scarlett O'Hara comes out. Mm-hmm. And he was somebody who could tell you to go fuck yourself. And he did on numerous occasions tell me to go, but he did it in a way that it was so sweet and so saccharine that you can't help but laugh and you can't help but love him more. Mm-hmm. And I think if Olivia could have found a way to have done that, of where she could have just been, whether it was raunchy or mean or whatever, but made it with such a sweetness and such a level of humor. Yeah. She had an opportunity there to really kind of be something that she just didn't rise to the challenge in that way.
Like a bless her heart kind of thing.
Yes, very a bless your heart.
So, what's so funny is Olivia's set is what actually convinced me they worked with writers, actually. Is what made me go, I think they work with writers. I'll tell you why. She says two things that are something you hear so often in, like open micer type comedies. It's like it's a trope with very inexperienced comics. And, that's why, and look, I don't know if they necessarily hired the best writers at Drag Race, Mm-hmm. So,
we've all seen Shakespeare.
Exactly. So, she says a line where she says, I think she opens with, I know what you're thinking. I don't remember what the joke was. She was, I know what you're thinking. That is such a fucking hacky haha cafe on, in North Hollywood, 5 p.m. open mic joke that I wanted to vomit. Same thing with her closing joke is so fucking hack with the, if you didn't like me, I'm Michelle Visage.
When she said that, I thought Joe was going to talk about this tomorrow on the show.
Yeah. And I was like, oh God, she worked with a writer. Okay, right. A shitty writer helped her write that joke. Or just like, you know what, just say this at the end because you have nothing. It was awful. And then finally, Rosé. Your thoughts on Rosé?
I thought Rosé was great. I understand why she was in the top. I don't quite get the whole you were funnier during rehearsal than you were here. Yeah. I didn't necessarily hear the difference between the two, but she seemed very comfortable. And as they talked about, she was the only one up there without notes. So she knew what she was doing. So that either shows that she knew what she was doing or she's super fast, because if she had jokes that the other ones had, then she needed to come up with other things. And I almost wonder if that's the case because her set seemed much shorter than the other sets.
Different sets had different lengths. It was something I was going to talk about, but I didn't have a chance to pull it. But depending on how they wanted to portray them, they were certain lengths and shorter. And so I think hers was intentionally tighter.
Okay.
And then they let
kind of to justify Candy's win, maybe.
Yeah. So, I think, Rosé was in the toughest position. She totally killed it. She did a good job. She did a great job. I think personally, she had the best set. I'm not going to tell Lori where I fall tomorrow, but I'm going to see where she judges. I think she had the best set just because based on her position, where she was and just the energy that she brought and how she worked it like almost like a pro, to be honest with you. Yeah. And, I thought there was a charisma, there was a control, which is a lot of stand-up is really about how you can control the stage. And, I think she was the winner of the challenge. Her jokes seemed like she wrote them. They were very, very personal and very, very specific. They didn't seem like a writer just generally wrote a joke, Right. And, I thought she was the winner of this challenge. I think, we'll talk about the end when we do any final thoughts on the episode, because people can bow out if they want. But, all right. Let's move on. Do you have any other thoughts on the roast people at all before we move on?
No, I thought that the jokes that Heidi, Nina, and Valentina had were not great.
No.
I just kind of remember them all being sort of forgettable.
Nina's joke about Bronx Zoo was kind of funny.
Oh, that one was funny, yeah.
Mm-hmm. What are we going to talk about at the end? I got to write it down and I'll forget. Oh. Yeah. I got to write it down.
I don't know. You didn't say it.
I know. I'm talking to myself.
Yes.
Anyway,
always.
Yeah. All right, on the main stage, Rosé, Gottmik, and Olivia are safe while Candy Muse snatches her first Maxi Challenge win of the season. This leaves Utica and Simone in the bottom two and forced to slug it out in a lip sync battle for their lives. The song No Tears Left to Cry by Ariana Grande. In the end, Simone is told Shantae you stay while Utica Queen is asked to sashay away. Taylor the Latte Boy, any final thoughts on this episode?
There was some, okay. Babalu said to me, it's going to be Olivia and Utica in the bottom two. And I said, no, it's not. It's going to be Simone and Utica. And he was just like, really? I said, yes. I said, because it's Utica's time to go home. And there's a chance that Olivia wouldn't rise to the challenge and they would send Olivia home. Mm-hmm. There's no way. We've seen Simone's lip sync, which we've seen the way she lip syncs, unfortunately, much like the cadence, she kind of has one sort of move that she's doing with all of these lip syncs that she's done. Mm-hmm. And they knew that it would be strong enough to send Utica home. There is part of me that I don't know that Simone was that much better than Utica. I kind of enjoyed Utica's lip sync a little bit more. It was a little bit more interesting to watch to me. But that was definitely storyline driven, as well as just the whole thing of where they were talking about just how amazing Candy was. Candy was good. It was a fair roast, but it wasn't this, oh God, it just knocked us out of the park. And we just knew that this was it. And this is what we've been waiting for. And, I'm such a huge Candy fan and all that. What? Mm-hmm. It just all seems so, they are forcing this down our throats that we are supposed to be rooting for her in the top 4 or top 3. And I don't get it. Mm-hmm. I don't understand. Plus that cinching was horrible. Mm-hmm. Oh, that dress was just, we didn't really do the looks, which I'm fine with not doing because there wasn't anything really to talk about. Mm-hmm. But I don't get it. I don't get why they are forcing this other than they need that little bit of drama.
I mean, I just think that's how it's been planned out, So it's time for her to go. In fact, it could be that's why they didn't help Simone as much with her set because they knew they needed her to send Utica home.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is that they knew that at this point, I think anybody watching the show knows that it could have been, depending on how everybody did, Olivia or Utica's week. Mm-hmm. We already know, we've known for, I think, quite a while who the top 4 are going to be. Mm-hmm. And I guess just the idea that they couldn't pin them against each other. They had to have somebody stronger to lip sync up against. So they picked Simone. It feels like very much like, well, you can figure out what's going to happen within the first 20 minutes of the episode, what's going to happen in the last 10 minutes of the episode. Mm-hmm. At this point, there doesn't seem to be a lot of surprises yet. I will say this though, out of who I think the final 4 are going to be, I don't know who the final 3 would be at this point. I know that you have that information.
I don't know the final 3.
You just know who the final 4 are?
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm assuming that next week Olivia's out. Just that they're setting this up to where that's going to be her time to go. Mm-hmm. But I also think that when you consider, out of Rosé, Gottmik, Candy, and Simone, really all of them have a reason why they could be. I could see any one of the 4 of them being, unless something seriously happens in the next couple of weeks. Well, no, that's not true because I don't see Candy being the next Drag Race superstar, but I also don't see them letting her go as 4th. So I don't know. It's very much of where I feel like the real mystery of who's going to win is going to begin after next week.
Yeah. A couple of things. One, I want to pay some lip service to RuPaul throwing out a Paul Lynde impression by saying, "Thank you, Dr. Fauci," right? Which I thought was really funny. Paul Lynde, iconic gay personality. Ben played Paul Lynde on her season of All Stars.
Yes.
In the Snatch Game. Next is also a nice little touch there that reminded me of the episode was Rosé laughing to herself in the workroom reminded me of Alyssa on that roast, laughing to herself in the workroom. And it was very similar to that. And that
was a fun scene to watch them all kind of reading each other a little bit, but it was reading each other in fun I thought was nice to see.
Yeah. And then, it was a very nice thing to see. And I really kind of liked the whole, like, oh God. All right, guys, we're going to be talking about some spoilery stuff. If you don't want to hear spoilers, get the fuck out! Yes, my power has returned. Oh God, right now Humble is running across the fucking bathroom. Why is she taking a bath right now with her hair like in like a shower cap and all the ducks, now because she jumped out, the ducks are bouncing in the waves.
Just slipped on a perfectly pink bar of soap that happened to be on the tile.
Yeah, and she's like, she's like skating to the radio, you know? And then she has like a bubble, like a Mr. Bubble bath. You know,
And why it's on the radio instead of on like, you know, some sort of other device. An old-timey, like...
Yeah, an old-timey, like Daisy Duck radio. Yeah. And I can imagine like blue tile too. Like that.
Right.
Like that Greek blue, I don't know what that's called, that azure tile.
Yeah.
Anyway. And she's like, oh, I'm wrapping a towel around her. Anyway. So, Candy's in the top 4. And I think she needed this win because they know she's going to be in the top 4. So they had to justify, because otherwise, if Gottmik or Rosé win, they've already won. And how are they going to justify? Because Olivia's won a couple of times.
Olivia's won twice.
Yes.
She won 2 back-to-back.
Yes. So if going to the top 4, how do they, therefore, make a top 4 without Candy? I mean, with Candy, if she's never won and the other queens have won.
Yeah.
So I need to give her this win to do it, and it's bullshit because Rosé or Gottmik, even though I personally think Rosé, but I'll take an argument for Gottmik, should have been the winner of this challenge, and it's fucking bullshit. And the rigory is so obvious, and I'm not here for it. Don't like it.
No.
Thank you.
Which is why we do a show about it every week.
Yeah, that's why we do a show about it every single fucking week. Any other thoughts, Taylor? Have we gotten it all?
No, I think we've gotten it all. I think we've gotten it all this week.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of RuPaul's Drag Race Recap. Be sure to join us next week and every week as we continue to discuss, dissect, and deconstruct each brand new episode of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 13. So for Taylor the Latte Boy and myself,
sashay away until next week.
Thank you for listening to RuPaul's Drag Race Recap. Have something to say? Email us at dragracerecap@afterthought.media. For more Drag Race and LGBTQ content, support us over at Patreon at patreon.com/afterthoughtmedia. You can follow Taylor the Latte Boy on Instagram and Twitter at PIMC Follow Joe Betance on Instagram at Joe Betance. That's JoeBetance. This episode was produced by Luke Stamen. Drag Race Recap is an Afterthought Media podcast.